program. We hope you're being strengthened and blessed in the Lord. We got a lot of information that I want to try to get out tonight, so we're going to get started quick on it. There is some discussions now concerning weather patterns and some people accusing others of possibly manipulating the weather. There was a Margie Taylor Greene, one of the Congress ladies from Georgia, who had brought the subject up of weather manipulation because some strange things has happened here in October. As we move into election cycles, it's always known as the October surprise. All of a sudden, 35 days before the election, these storms all of a sudden start coming ashore. But they're acting in strange ways. They come to shore in Florida, but do all the damage in Georgia and North Carolina. And then a lot of bad things happening thereafter with a failure to do what needs to be done to assist the people. The hardest hit areas are what is Republican areas. The storm going into Georgia, just sort of on a miraculous level, just somehow twisted around and bypassed Atlanta, a Democratic hub, and hit the Republican areas. Now, the main problem was water. You've probably never seen so much water if you've seen it on the news. It looks like these whole cities are nothing but rivers. How did so much rain drop? Now they're wanting to change voter laws exactly as they did with COVID. So, Margie Taylor Greene brings up the issue of weather control and weather manipulation, being able to, at will, cause excessive rain or even guide storms. Now, Miss Greene is being raked over the coals by Biden and everybody else from the Democrats and their news networks, that she's some kind of a crazy freak, that people control the weather. Did she actually say that the weather is being manipulated, that someone is actually able to cause this and steer storms? How stupid can she be?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is now like a big mover and shaker in the Republican Party, is promoting a bizarre conspiracy theory about a mysterious they, you can imagine who that is, controlling the weather, suggesting that they are sending hurricanes to Republican areas to impact the election. Like someone is sitting at some computer somewhere pressing hurricane.
All I want to do is look at this evening, is weather control and weather manipulation possible, or does it already exist for sure? Why would the Democrats be coming out and screaming, overdoing it about how crazy this conspiracy is? First of all, the Bible told us, as I've quoted to you many times, the Bible told us clearly that there would be a time in the last days, Daniel chapter 12, that knowledge would increase. We have seen that increase of knowledge. I've brought out to you before how dangerous it is for there to be an increase of knowledge and a decrease of wisdom. But we have certainly seen the increase of knowledge, for sure. It's doubling now, like every 6 to 8 months. Unbelievable. The Bible also told us that there would be men that would destroy the earth. The book of Revelation telling us that the Lord will destroy them that destroys the earth, His creation. So what's going on in the book of Revelation with all that destruction is being done by men. God is going to destroy them that destroy the earth. The Bible also told us in the book of Revelation that if that day was not shortened, if those days were not shortened, no flesh would be saved. They would kill the whole world, messing with the ionosphere, the ozone, manipulating weather, throwing the whole system out of whack. The Bible tells us that there will be tribulation and trouble such as the world has never known nor shall ever know again. Is all of it connected to this knowledge explosion? Definitely it is. Now, let's just look tonight, and again, I won't say somebody's messing with the weather, and I won't say they're not. I don't know. So the question is tonight, and what I want to present tonight is, can they mess with the weather? Let's start with this. This weather control and weather modification has been well published, publicized through the government, congressional hearings, books from people in the bureaucracies, professors and physicists, for years and years and years. Up until right now, weather modification and weather control has never come under question. Beijing was accused of manipulating weather over one of their Olympics. Here's what the article read. The Beijing Weather Modification Office, so they have a weather modification office, from a part of China's nationwide weather control effort. So they have weather control efforts. It's believed to be the world's largest. It employs 37,000 people nationwide who seed clouds by firing rockets and shells loaded with silver iodide into those clouds. Rainmaking, seeding cloud. China is already doing it, been doing it for a long time. If you know anything about the Vietnam War, you know it was straightforward given to us, that we were seeding clouds. In other words, that means they were able to make it rain. Weather modification. And we've known about this for years. Here's a patent. This is already patented. A method is disclosed for affecting the formation and or direction of low atmospheric weather systems. Audio generators are positioned to project sound waves toward a peripheral area of a weather system. The sound waves are generated at a frequency to affect the formation of the weather system in a manner to disrupt, enhance, make it worse, or direct the formation, the weather pattern. The sound waves can also be projected in a manner to cause the system to produce rain. And here is the patent number. Now, this is just one. I have a limited amount of time. You can look it up yourself. There are hundreds of these patents. These things are already created to direct, to steer, to lessen, to make worse storm systems. This is not new news. We've known about this for years. So again, why are they screaming that it is so crazy? Now that these storms has done some very strange moving about, landing in Republican areas, and now they want to change the voter laws. Now, I'm just saying this. If they can do it, if it can be done, and if they are the ones over the bureaucracies that controls it, well, then one might come to the conclusion that at least it might be being done, but it certainly is no crazy conspiracy. This was us in 1942. 1942, working on weather modification.
Bloomfield, Michigan, 1942. As World War II rages across several continents, acclaimed architect and eventual designer of the St. Louis Arch, Eero Saarinen, is secretly enlisted by the United States military to work for a new clandestine organization. Its name? The OSS, Office of Strategic Services, or as it is known today, the CIA.
The fact that Eero Saarinen was in the OSS designing weapon systems during World War II, and at a time when the OSS was looking into ways to weaponize weather.
So the only point that I'm trying to make right now is, once again, from 1942, what became the CIA was in the business of trying to create things that could control the weather. That's going back to 1942. That's before this technological explosion we're dealing with now. So for almost 100 years, they've been working on weather modification and using it. That was in 1942. 1958. A White House advisor on weather modification. 1958, a White House advisor on weather modification. It means that they was working it then. Says that the Defense Department are studying ways to manipulate charges of earth and sky and so affect the weather. That was in 58. Once they set that project out, 2 years later in 1960, there was enormous, unprecedented weather events that caused major damage all across the United States. Just a coincidence? Well, maybe so, maybe not. But one thing we do know for sure, they were playing with the weather in 1942. They was playing with the weather and having congressional meetings on it in 1958. So this ain't some crazy conspiracy. Whether or not somebody's manipulating it right now, well, you decide. But the fact that they can, and we have known that they could for almost 100 years, it's not some crazy conspiracy theory. There's an old saying, thou dost protest too much. In 1975, Senator Pale of the United States Senate Subcommittee urged that weather and climate modification work be overseen by civilian agencies answerable to the U.S. government, but it never happened. So that's 42, 58, the 1960s, now the 70s, 75, Senator Pale saying that the work you're doing on weather modification needs to be done by outside sources and are accountable to us. So the weather modification programs was important enough for the Congress to demand access to it in 1975. In 1960, the CIA reported that national governments were already able to manipulate weather for military purposes. In 1960, the CIA said we are already able to manipulate weather for purposes of war. That's in 1960 from the CIA themselves. Can we manipulate weather? We certainly can. Have we known about it for a long time? We certainly have. So what is this great conspiracy these Democrats are screaming about? These are well-known facts. In 1995, the DoD, Department of Defense, sampled lightning and hurricane manipulation studies from a project they called Skyfire and Project Storm Fury. So in that program, they were studying the manipulation of hurricanes and lightning as well. But they're already playing with guiding storm. But it goes on. The same report says, the military studied both lasers and chemicals, which they figured could damage the ozone layer over an enemy, looking at ways to cause earthquakes, as well as detect them as a part of the project code named Prime Argus. So that's in the early and mid-90s. Still they're playing with hurricanes, attempting to guide them, manipulate them, make them worse, make them less, and even mess with earthquakes. That was in the mid-90s. That report goes on to say, the next year the Air Force revealed a bit more. Its Spacecast 2020 master plan includes weather control as a possible new weapons initiative. Defense News also stated in their report that under, quote, weather control, the article said that scientists have experimented with weather control since the 1940s. The Spacecast 2020 noted that using environmental modification techniques to destroy, damage, or injure other states are prohibited. So here we're talking about now treaties actually being signed not only among us. that makes it illegal to use weather modifications against other states, but now there's a world treaty also that it is illegal to manipulate the weather over the country. So what is the conspiracy here? I'm not reading from radio host here. These are all congressional writings, congressional facts from the 1940s all the way to now. Can weather be manipulated? Yes, it definitely can be manipulated. They have manipulated it, and it's not unreasonable to assume with their lust for power, and we're sitting here 30 days away from an election, that they ain't messing with the weather. It's credible. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But to suggest it is not crazy conspiracies. In 1958, the chief White House advisor on weather modification, Captain Howard T. Orville, said the U.S. Department of Defense was studying ways to manipulate the charges of the earth and sky so to affect weather by using electromagnetic beams to ionize or deionize the atmosphere over a particular area. I hope I'm not boring you with all this reading, but it's the only way to establish fact. You're hearing these people scream conspiracy, talk about Donald Trump being inhumane and Marjorie Taylor Greene being a wacko nut because she says there's a possibility that somebody's messing with the weather. And now they're presenting to this dumbed down generation who's never studied anything but where and how much they can pay for and buy them some weed. They're screaming and hollering as if it is a nut job to assume that weather modification manipulation has not been going on for almost 100 years, written in the congressional records. One more. U.S. Congress subcommittee hearings on oceans and international environment looked into military weather and climate modification conducted in the early 1970s. What emerged was an awesome picture of far-ranging research and experimentation by the Department of Defense into ways environmental tampering could be used as a weapon. So there is no question, brothers and sisters. They've been playing with the weather for a long time, and in this technological explosion, this knowledge explosion that we're talking about, you can only imagine how far along they are with it. Let's go to some congressional testimonies.
I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Again, going back to Senator Pell, who said that weather weapons are the most powerful weapons ever created, even worse than nuclear bombs. That was back in 1975. He didn't say if weather weapons are created or if we get the technology. No, because it was already there. He said weather weapons are the most dangerous. That's why he wanted a treaty signed worldwide and in the states that one community couldn't go flood the other's cornfields, because it already existed in 75. Here's a physicist being questioned about this weather manipulation from CBS.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right, lasers now.
We physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. In the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, I This fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now, and in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam. You name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting. Professor Michio Kaku, thank you so much.
Hurricanes, earthquakes can all be tampered with, he's telling you. This has been going on since Vietnam, the seeding of the clouds. But they flew over and seeded the clouds from up in the air. Now he's telling you of our technological explosion Daniel warned us of. That now we've gone far beyond that. And that we can just send it through rockets and such things as that up into the atmosphere and cause rains, manipulate, guide and steer hurricanes, and create earthquakes. Once again, this is old news. How long they've been playing with it? Let's go back again to the early 60s and listen to what John F. Kennedy said.
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
The President of the United States back in the early 60s already envisioning weather control and somebody that could control it. Well, of course, it's a problem because now that all of this science and knowledge explosion is taking place worldwide, well, we do run into a problem. If we don't do it, somebody else is. We have to stay a step ahead of our enemies, and this is technology now. You can cause earthquakes, cause lightning bolts. You can cause hurricanes to be guided and steered. Everything I've presented is from the government. And a president in 1960 is telling you about controlling the weather. Point is, this ain't no new thing. So why are these screaming Democrats acting as though it don't even exist? But for these liars, it's part of their game. You won't be able to hear this one too well. This was LBJ, the one that became president after they killed Kennedy. And LBJ is once again on the subject of weather modification and says that whoever rules the weather will rule the world.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
So they were heavily involved in this in the early 60s, the mid 50s, all the way back to 1942. They was already using some of these things in 1942, which means they had been playing with it before 1942, all the way up to this present day, right now, of which it is a well-known fact that hurricanes can be moved, can be steered. How precise? I don't know. But it is a well-established fact. Earthquakes can be created with the technology that we have. Hurricanes can be enhanced because of the technologies we have. Hurricanes can be guided and steered. And you can seed clouds from the ground and cause enormous rainfall over any area you want to do so. Now, I close with what I said at the beginning. If the bureaucrats that controls these projects are like the bureaucrats that we see in Washington, D.C., who is 1,000,000% now behind the destruction of Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and to gain control, permanent control of the Democratic Party. The FBI has been 100% behind them. The DOJ has been 100% behind them. The CIA has been 100% behind them. The bureaucracies that run this stuff. If they have the power to do it, why wouldn't they? It's at least something to be considered for sure. You're not a crazy conspiratist to believe that the weather can be and is being manipulated. Our own government records and presidents from the 1940 to this present day has already broadcasted it loud and clear. It is a fact. So I'll leave it up to you. Do you believe they playing with the weather? Don't think of some kind of crazed nut lunatic jobs here, because we're talking about the subject. I've proved to you tonight beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's real, it exists, it has been long running for a long, long time. So, again, I'll leave it to you. Do you believe that these demonic bureaucrats, if they have the power to manipulate the weather, wouldn't do it? Sure they would.
Down through the years, said don't turn your back on enemies or friends. One or the other of them gonna do you in. Better watch your back, don't you be no fool. The knife's in the hand of the one that's close to you. Better watch your back. That's what he said to me. Oh, I've lived and I've learned and I've come to see. You better watch your back. The story from a long ago. A man named Judas and Lord, the rest you know. Oh, backstabbing, the lying cheat, betrayed the good Lord, and he kissed his cheek. Better watch your back, don't you be no fool. In the hand of the one that's close to you. Better watch your back. That's what he said to me.